All right, let's pick up where we left off. So if this is looking a little foreign to you, I would check in with the other video we did before here. So we've graphed sine, so we've yet to graph our amplitude and period changes. Let's start with that amplitude change this time. So our second function here is just going to be 2 sine of x. So an amplitude shift of 2 means those highs and lows, instead of being at 1, will be shifted up to 2. And down to -2. But those midpoints, those will stay exactly the same. So there's my amplitude shift. Next, we also have, oops, let me get a different color. Let's go this yellowish. So we have, come on, 2 sine of 1/2 x. So we already determined that 1/2 gives us a period shift, changes it to 4 pi. So it goes from 2 pi to 4 pi. So that means everything is stretched out by a multiple of 2. So as we're graphing this, what we can do is we can divide every x value of these points by 1/2, which in turn is the same thing as just multiplying by 2. So pi over 2 times 2 gives me pi. So this point is going to extend out to pi. Pi times 2 is 2 pi. So that point's going to extend there. 3 pi over 2 is 3 pi, so that's going to extend out to 3 pi, which is something that doesn't exist on the coordinate plane given. And 2 pi will extend out to 4 pi. So it'll still have this same shape, but we'll go all the way to 4 pi. Have 2 pi as that midpoint, and still start at 0. Where those highs and lows will be at 2 and -2. I would like you to extend this out to 4 pi. I know it's not given on this scale here, but it's something that we would do in class. The last thing I want to talk through here are vertical shifts and reflections. Let's move me over here. So the way we go about graphing vertical shifts and reflections is the same way as we did those amplitude and period changes. We start by graphing just the regular function. So we'll start by just graphing cosine. So cosine, remember, has a starting point at 0, 1, hits that midpoint at pi over 2, hits that low point at -1, midpoint again at 3 pi over 2, and then back to 1 at 2 pi. So to complete that full cycle. Now, if I want to graph this vertical shift of 2 plus cosine of x, all that I'm doing here is I just take cosine of x and I shift it up by 2. So this high point is going to shift up 1, 2. This midpoint is going to shift up 1, 2. Low point is going to shift up 1, 2 to 1. Here we're going to shift up 1, 2, and on the end up 1, 2. So it's just a matter of showing those shifts. So I suppose I should make sure to scale this out so we know what we're going by. And that's all there is to it. In the same way, when we have reflections, so we start by just graphing cosine. So I'll use that kind of gross yellow again. So we start at 0, 1. We have those points at pi over 2, 0, at pi -1, 3 pi over 2, 0, and 2 pi 1. And you'll see as you go ahead and continue to graph, those 5 points will become very familiar with both sine and cosine. So there's cosine. Notice I didn't connect the dots like on the other one. You can connect the dots if you want to. It's entirely up to you. But as I said in class, sometimes you might think it gets a little too jumbled if you're connecting dots, but it's up to you. So then graphing the whole thing, again, we'll use this green because I like green. We have a reflection because we're multiplying by a negative. So a reflection outside is a reflection over the x-axis, which just means everything gets flipped over the x-axis. So this point, since it's a distance of 1 above the x, it'll go to 1 below. This point will stay the same because it's already on the x-axis. Here, it's at -1. We'll shift up to 1, or reflect over to 1. So we're just taking the top, flipping it down, bottom, flipping it up. Midpoint stays the same. Top shifts to -1. And that would give us our 1 complete period. And there we have it. So you have an IF to complete as well. It is due on Wednesday, so please make sure you take this time to complete said IF. I can show you a little bit of what that looks like and anticipate any questions. So with this IF, because it's going to be a little bit challenging to graph things. Oh, well, I haven't posted it yet. It'll be a little challenging to graph things. So what you'll be seeing mainly here are identifying graphs with their equations, as well as coming up with some of those important characteristics like amplitude and period of these graphs. So here we go. So this is what we're looking at. So you'll have some equations where you have to come up with amplitude and period visually, like so, as well as from an equation. So that's going to be our focus there. So being able to identify those characteristics. Being able to graph is something that we will continue to do as we continue throughout this week. But being able to identify those is going to be really important. And then we'll continue with more and more graphing as we go about this unit.